There you can see the eye, and as it goes right along the coast of Cuba, that shows good signs for all of South Florida, as a matter of...
Taking a look at the satellite sequence over the last several hours, we can see the eye moving toward Cuba very, very clearly. Strong hurricanes have a good eye, and you can see it real clearly. Just scraping the Cuban coast, but now just enough inland to make a difference. And in the next reconnaissance, if we ever get another reconnaissance, we'll see less wind and less pressure, more pressure. The reason if I say if we get another reconnaissance is that we can't fly into Cuban airspace. And so that's why we're not getting new pressure readings on the hurricane, and we just have to try to estimate based on what the satellite looks like. When the hurricane gets closer, we might be able to see an eye wall and get an idea of exactly where the hurricane...
110 miles per hour. We go back in time a bit and follow its course during the past 8 hours or so, just to the southwest of Acklands Island in the Bahamas, about 11 or 12 o'clock last night, and then we just follow it during the nighttime hours. It just continues to move off to the west at 15 to 20 miles per hour, and during the past couple of hours, just near the north coast of Cuba, and that would be a good indication that some weakening is possible because of all the high mountains that are around the island of Cuba. But we don't really know for sure how much it has weakened, if it has at all, but that would certainly be the place to do so. It continues to move off to the west, maybe a few degrees north of west, but not very much at all. The latest radar we find is just a couple of...
In northwest Florida...
For the people, some of the people anyway, in South Florida, all the hurricane warnings have been discontinued on the peninsula of Florida, and they remain in effect this hour only from Craig Key down to Key West. This is the latest picture. This is a little bit off the grid here. The eye is just inland, as you'll see in just a second, on the Key West radar. Our latest position is 22.9, 81.1, and that is some 120 miles now, south-southeast of Key West. The hurricane continues to move toward the west at about 20 miles an hour. And the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center still clocked the top winds at 110 miles an hour. But we have not had any reconnaissance aircraft in this since about, before midnight, because it's been over land in Cuba. Can't get any recon. So we don't know really exactly what the top winds might be at this point. We have some indication, though, looking at our satellite pictures, that it's already undergone some weakening. That in itself is certainly good news. Cuba has taken the brunt of this hurricane, as you can see. The eye of the hurricane has been very close to the north coast all night long. Over land, just about all of it, pretty well west of Havana yet, but moving toward the west at 20 miles an hour. Let's show you what's happened in the last several hours. Here we are several hours ago. We'll put this in motion, and you can see the eye of the hurricane moving on toward the west, still at a pretty rapid rate of speed, about 20 miles an hour or so. And we don't see any indication that course is going to change very much in the next few hours. Later on, we expect it to turn a little bit more toward the north in the Gulf of Mexico. A very large high up to the north and the hurricane down here, and that's creating some fairly gusty winds. And here are what some of them have been the last several hours at gusting to 51 miles Key West. And we do have nothing more than gale warnings
are up. Flooding will be about 2 to 4 feet above normal, at least the tides will, and you can see some thunderstorms still in southern parts of Florida. And by the way, a tornado watch is still in effect across this entire area until later on today, and we'll show you exactly where that is in just a minute. Still moving off to the west. Let's look at the wide view.
Through the pictures, you can see the eye move along close to the north coast of Cuba, but certainly inland, and we don't think it's going to emerge over the water very likely until it gets west of Havana, or right near Havana perhaps. We'll take you right up to the present time, and here we see the latest. Now, we still have...
Looks like it ought to go over Havana in another hour or two, so they may experience the calm of the central core of the storm. Now, we've had some reports from a few weather stations in the north coast of Cuba suggesting they certainly have had full hurricane force winds, maybe gusts 20 to 90 to 95 miles an hour. So we got on the northern fringe of the storm, and if you've got to go through a bad hurricane, that's the way to do it. Go out and go through the outer edges.
Of course,
area of heavy rainfall represented by the green coloration all the way down through the Keys and into the Straits, and then the upper bands of the storm will be moving across from east to west throughout most of the day. Here's the way the satellite...
Tuesday, do you? Hello, Trenton! And thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Harry Prinsiski. I probably mispronounced that, and they refer to me as not a hog caller, and I appreciate that. All right, here's Kate. The eye is located right along the north coast of Cuba. Now, Kate is moving westward at about 20 miles per hour. Miami did have a gust to 78 miles per hour. However, it appears that Kate will go out into the Gulf and by Thursday morning be just south of New Orleans. Peak winds are now downgraded to 95 miles an hour. However, when Kate gets out in the open Gulf water, she'll probably intensify a little more. She's temporarily weakened just a little bit. Central barometer.
Early picture starting at 11 o'clock last night, all the way over that area, right along the coast, almost like it was rolling along. And that was our savior. With just a tiny change, as Dr. Frank pointed out often enough and properly, it could easily have seriously caused problems in the Keys and even southeastern Florida, including Miami. It did not do so. We're very thankful about all of that. We hope we don't see another one of these silly things in November for a good many years to come. But that's the way it looks.
Are in effect in the lower Keys, from Craig Key on down to Key West, right, Tortugas and Marquesas Keys. Right there is the eye, perhaps not quite so far north according to the Key West radar. We'll show you that in just a minute. The latest position we have is just part of the eye is back out over water. That's really the first time we've seen this in quite a while, the eye essentially having been inland overnight in Cuba, beginning about midnight or so. This north coast of Cuba, we believe, has been hit very hard by this hurricane. We had a report out of Veradero just about an hour and a half ago now, indicating the winds were gusting to 105 miles an hour there. We'll bring you back several hours and let you see what's been happening to the eye of the hurricane. Notice these pictures are 1 hour apart, and you can see that it continues to drift off toward the west. Had been going about 20 miles an hour, but once again, perhaps a little bit more toward the north now. Now, notice how the northern part of the eye is out over water. And just as that happened, we saw the strongest wind at Key West we've seen all day, when the wind gusted up to about 58 miles an hour. 51 miles an hour at Fort Lauderdale, and there's 59 miles an hour at Key West. Once again at Veradero, a couple of hours ago in Cuba, the wind gusted up to 105 miles an hour. Offshore now, this is the first time we've seen it all the way offshore. Now, if we look back here for several hours, we'll go back about 3 or 4 hours, and this is where the eye was at that time. You can see it was well inland, but as we sequence through these pictures, and there's one picture here about every half hour, you see it gradually getting out over the open water again, about half of it over the open water there. And right now it's kind of obscured by Havana, the HHA there, but now you can see it is definitely over the open water, moving toward the west-northwest. And it stayed remarkably well intact, we think, considering the eye was over land that long. So now that it is open over open water again, we think it might get even better organized once Lauderdale. Now, at Key West, during the last hour, we see 69 miles an hour in gusts. That's the strongest.
Warnings that are now in effect. We have hurricane warnings in the lower and the central Keys. We've had some very strong squalls move through the Key West area and up into Marathon. We've had some gusts reported during the afternoon up in the vicinity of 100 miles an hour. We still have gale warnings along the Florida West Coast from Fort Myers down to Cape Sable. Now, we've discontinued the gale warnings along the East Coast from Jupiter Inlet down to Craig Key. However, we are cautioning small craft along the East Coast to exercise caution until winds and seas subside, and actually you should stay in port. The system, the hurricane, is still moving towards the west-northwest, 15 to 20 miles an hour. The indications from the radar at Key West would show that the center is now back over the open water just north of Havana. And so we expect the hurricane to continue moving towards the west-northwest tonight, gradually turn towards the northwest on Tuesday, and probably will regain strength rather rapidly. It really didn't lose a lot of strength as it's moved along the north coast of Cuba, so it is still a fairly strong hurricane with winds probably near 95 miles an hour. The 5 p.m. position now, this is the coordinates on the center, is 23.5 north, 82.6 west. That position is just off the coast, north of Havana, or it's about 85 miles southwest of Key West. The next advisory on this storm will be issued at 8 p.m. this evening.
All right, Dr. Frank, thank you very much.
Our meteorologist, Don Noe, has been tracking Kate right from the very start, keeping a close watch on her path.
And Don is standing by at the weather map with a storm track for us. Don?
Before the season officially ends.
You know, on this Saffir-Simpson scale, this would be a good solid 2. Now, it's not the 4 and 5, but it's a good solid 2, and 2s can cause a lot of destruction. And
there's not much north of Miami, but a whole heck of a lot of stuff just to the south of us, and the shower activity continues to move very rapidly off to the northwest, but it has been raining in the Keys for a long, long time, and probably will continue to rain there at least for the next 3 or 4 hours, so that could be some local heavy amounts of rain, some flooding on top of the winds coming in, too. So the worst is not over yet for the South Florida Keys. Looking at now the weather elsewhere across the country, first of all, we're going to again take a look at this storm track, and notice as the storm moves over the open waters. Now that is good for maintaining a strength of the hurricane. It is not good for residents, of course, along the Gulf Coast, as they're going to have to start to wonder about the storm very shortly. We're going to take a look at the satellite photograph, the last thing here from midnight last night unto this morning. You can see as the eye of the storm literally begins to roll along the coast, and you can see it just kind of moves along to the north and then finally goes inland just about there and then emerges off the northern end of